That's me, Gavin McClurg. I raced in the Red Bull X Alps 4 times in the last decade, but I wanted to bring that style of race to Utah. An arena that is just totally mind-blowing, and a place where we could show the world what this arena is like from the sky. The Global Rescue XRedRocks takes place in one of the most surreal and magical places on Earth. The arena stretches hundreds of miles in every direction, surrounded by some of Utah's and the world's most incredible national parks: Zion, Escalante, Capitol Reef, Grand Canyon, Canyonlands, Moab, Dinosaur. Is truly a mystical land with mystical possibilities. We do the race in over 4 days at the end of September, just as the colors start going completely psychedelic. And for the 4th edition, we had unbelievable weather. Every day the base was well over 18,000 feet, which is our legal maximum, or 5,400 meters. So typically athletes can expect to do 1,000 to over 3,000 meters of vertical ascent each day, and then well into even a couple hundred kilometers of flying. There are 3 race divisions: Challenge, Adventure, and Pro. Some of the world's best hike and fly athletes descend on southern Utah to go hard against themselves and against nature for 4 days of incredible racing. It's the only race that takes place as a stage race. What's great about a stage race is that all the athletes start every day together at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they have till 8 p.m. to get to goal. Many times no one gets to goal, and so it's just the furthest along course line. So time doesn't really matter, it just matters how far you get. And in goal, time then matters because you want to get there before everybody else. Athletes are out there totally on their own. We have resupply points where you can get water and snacks, but you've got to take care of yourself from the gun in the morning at 8 a.m. to the gun at night at 8 p.m. It is easily one of the hardest adventure races on Earth, and here in North America, it is the premier and biggest hike and fly race that exists. Day 1, the task committee set a task about 90 kilometers from Cove, which is one of our lower launches, and then out into the valley where the athletes had to tag a big cylinder and then either decide where they were going to travel north on ground to find another launch or travel back to Cove. Cove is a very tricky launch to get to. There's no trails. It's a lot of bushwhacking. It's very steep. And then get back up to Cove and then try to fly from there north. The conditions for task 1 were a little bit windy and south, so the task committee decided to call a task north. The challenge division, their goal was quite a bit shorter, so most of them flew out to the big cylinder, landed, and just huffed it on foot. The challenge division was won very quickly by Robert Barlow, who was moving so fast on the ground we thought he was actually flying in the live tracking. And most of the adventure athletes tried to find another launch north of town. Some were successful, some weren't, but in the end, it was a great racing and won by John Dorrance. And in the pro division, they had to tag a cylinder that was over on the west side of the valley, and that put almost all of the athletes back on the ground. But some, very few, survived. Tanguy was leading the charge in the beginning, but he then bombed out and was caught up by Jared Scheid and Tim Roches, who were having an incredible race, getting way up tall, almost near 18,000 feet, and looked like Jared had Tim, but then bombed right before on final glide, and Tim flew over his head and was the only one that day that flew into goal into pro.
Yeah.
And so that day was won by Tim Roaches.
Trop fort le tir.
For task 2, the task committee decided to do something that we've always wanted to do in every division of the Global Rescue XRedRocks, but never have had the weather. And that's to go way out east, out into the canyonlands and what we call the swell. This is hundreds of square miles of just canyonland desert, nothing but rock, no roads, no cell, nothing but snakes, cougars, big animals, big colors, wild vistas, and incredible flying conditions. This year we finally had the forecast to pull it off. 100 kilometers from Monroe, and the athletes decided on which launch they wanted to use, but most of them climbed up to Cove again like they did the first day, and the colors were just even getting better and better as the hours went by. And athletes very quickly got in the air in all divisions, challenge, adventure, and pro. The challenge division only had to make really a couple moves in the air and then fly back east to the Kusharam Valley where their goal was. Many of them tagged it pretty quickly and stayed in the air and kept going to try to make adventure and pro goal, which was identical on that second day. Several athletes hit airspace that day. That's a nice problem to have when you have to stay below 18,000 feet, and that's your biggest problem of the day. Cloud streets were epic, the colors were epic, and the flying was absolutely fantastic. A day that few pilots will ever forget. Task 2 was won by seconds by Jared Scheid, who would take over the race lead on that day, followed closely by Tanguy Renaud Good, Ben Walker, Sebron Warren, Tim Roaches, and our first female in the pro division, Anna Berger. In the adventure division, Patrick Cannon came in with pro athletes, and in the challenge division, a really fast race was run by Chris Mann. It was one of the most incredible tasks in the history of the Global Rescue XRedRocks. The Day 3 task off Mount Etna is one of the most stunning places and one of the most beautiful peaks in southern Utah. From the top of it, you can almost see into Zion National Park. Pilots quickly gained the peak, got into the air, and had a lifetime adventure. It quickly skied out at over 17,000 feet, hit the first couple turn points, had to top land, got back in the air. The pros flew back up through Mount Etna and the Tushars, and into the mountain range called the Bavants, and then across to Goal and Monroe. For task 3, the goal was the same for all divisions in the town of Monroe. The racing was really exciting for everybody at the end. They were all stacked together super tight. Many thought they had goal on glide, but a north wind caught a bunch of pilots out. There was some great final racing on the ground and in the sky. And in the end, it was won by local legend Sam Inouye in the pro division, John Dorrance again in the adventure division, and Patrick Switzer in the challenge division.
Local legend.
And it was a flight that was just stunning and absolutely remarkable for everybody that got in the sky. On day 4, we used yet another launch, the 4th different launch for 4 different days, and off Monroe Peak, which is the highest mountain right above Monroe. Really absolutely stunning, big bowls and huge swaths of orange and reds and yellows this time of year. The key was being really patient. Athletes made quick work getting to the peak in Monroe, but then it was really a waiting game, and patience was the key because it was quite a bit more stable on the last day of the race, and athletes really wanted to fly all the way to goal. But eventually, pilots started launching into the sky and getting really tall. Again, it was a day where you could very easily break the 18,000-foot max airspace, or 5,486 meters, and many athletes got underway really quickly, but again, patience was the game as all pilots reached the I-70 corridor, which is about 30 kilometers north of launch. We call it the Suck Bowl. It just grounds pilots left and right. It's always a really tricky part in the course, and this day was no different. Tim Roches and Sebron Warren came in within seconds of one another into goal in the pro division, and had Tim won that day, he would have tied for the overall with Jared Scheid, who had landed earlier and had to race up and get back in the air, who came in 6th. But the story of today was Anna Berger in the pro division. She came in 3rd, absolutely delighted. She had no idea that she was in that position. And in the adventure division, it was Elise Little who impressed, came in 2nd, just behind Patrick Cannon. She said one of the best races of her life. There were a lot of smiles on this day, a lot of good flying, and congratulations to the Challenge Division athletes, and on this final day, Keaton Blair. After 4 amazing days of racing in the Global Rescue XRedRocks, the overall was won by 1 point by Jared Scheid, followed closely by Tim Roches, just 1 point behind, followed closely by Sebron Warren. In the adventure division, John Dorrance won, followed by Patrick Cannon and Austin Fisher. And in the challenge division, Robert Barlow, again, the guy that we always thought was flying when he was on the ground, really fast, really strong, followed by Damon Hardwick and Patrick Switzer. Many thanks to all the people who make the Global Rescue XRedRocks a reality, our film crew, our medical team, our safety team, and huge thanks to the town of Monroe for all your support. All the locals, the local club, and all of our amazing athletes. Thank you for joining. Thank you for coming out. We'll see you next year.